going to see what's called a bridge, which is a bridge towards membership of individual programs that really do focus on improving the ability of NATO as an institution to provide assistance to Ukraine.
Jim Townsend, the former Deputy Secretary of Defence for Europe at NATO under Obama. Jim, thank you very much for staying up late for us. What are your sort of expectations as the NATO summit gets underway? What are sort of the best case scenario over the next couple of days?
Well, I think the best case scenario for a lot of us, both on both sides of the Atlantic, is that Biden comes across, I think, as he did this evening in his speech, but he comes across as not being hampered by age-related slowness or some of what we saw during the debate a couple of days ago. I think that would be a great result, that we see a strong Biden and that we see a strong and united NATO too. That
Um,
that yes.
Introducing sort of the world leaders, I mentioned there that his speech was almost pitched towards his sort of international allies as well. He spoke for about 13 minutes. It was a clear voice, very different
Right.
from the fumbling. Did it sort of instill you with any confidence?
Not really. I think he did fine, but we, the performance during the debate was so difficult to put out of your mind. I think it's going to take more than just doing well at the NATO press conferences or this opening welcoming speech to really erase that from the minds of the
Mm.
public. So yeah.
Does this risk overshadowing what the summit's trying to achieve?
Well, I think it risks taking away the headlines, so that all of us know what the summit will achieve. There's some important things dealing with Ukraine and NATO defense and NATO military plans, NATO defense spending, as your Labor government knows, Keir Starmer. That'll be important for all of us to see, but the headlines instead will mention Biden more than it'll mention these other important points.
Mm. We arrive in NATO with sort of lots of questions over when Keir Starmer might increase the defence spending, but the wider context, we actually contribute quite a lot compared to other NATO members.
Well, UK contributes an excellent military force. I hope that you all are very proud of them. We love working with the UK military, but it is very small, and I think we hope to see the spending in the UK over time to increase the number of forces that you have. You do contribute leadership to the alliance too, and that's critical. UK is always out there in front politically within the alliance, moving the alliance along. And I think your leadership on the military is also important, particularly building out your military the way other allies are doing too, including the US.
You speak quite positively about our current state of our military. Philip Ingram, he's a former colonel in British military intelligence, said that the government was playing with fire because it will take years to fix our army, our ammunition stocks, to get the RAF and the Navy ready. And the concern is that if we had to fight a war, we could only manage to fight a short one and for only about a month. I mean, are you worried that a critical piece of the NATO alliance actually standing on our own, we wouldn't be able to achieve very much militarily?
Well, that bothers me quite a bit, and it bothers many in the alliance, many here in Washington too. But it's not just the UK; it's other allies as well. It's going to take many years for us to build out our militaries. But I want to stress in terms of the UK military is that as a fighting force, man for man, woman for woman, they're excellent forces. But the problem is, as I mentioned, not only are they too small, but as you just pointed out, ammunition stocks or numbers of armored vehicles or numbers of aircraft, being able to crew the Royal Navy. Those kinds of things are important too, and those are shortfalls that the UK has. We just need more UK military.
What is also really clear is Keir Starmer has stressed that there will be no change in the continued support for Ukraine. He would like to see Ukraine join NATO. Where do you think that conversation will get to at this summit?
Well, that's a good question. And, that's what always, before the summits last year, that was always the big question was what can the nations in the alliance agree to in terms of having Ukraine come on board. And right now, it is still a majority within the alliance that wants to wait a bit. I think the closer you get to Russia in terms of countries, the more anxious you are that Ukraine get in. With the Poles, the Balts, Romania, those nations are they want to make more progress. But I think in Washington at this 75th anniversary summit, we're not going to see membership and we're not going to see the beginning of membership talks, but we're going to see what's called a bridge, which is a bridge towards membership of individual programs that really do focus on improving the ability of NATO as an institution to provide assistance to Ukraine, military assistance, funding, and interoperable assistance in terms of military forces, military equipment that we provide, that it's not a hodgepodge, that it's more coordinated. So you'll see this bridge, but not much more in terms of membership for Ukraine.
Jim, thank you so much, giving us a lot more context of what we can expect today and as the summit gets underway. Jim Townsend, former Deputy Secretary of Defence for Europe and NATO under Obama.
As climate change makes for warmer summers and less ice, Russia and China are developing a new shipping route through the Northeast Passage, and it's been called the Ice Silk Road. The Times' China correspondent Richard Spencer joins us. Morning, Richard.
Good morning.
Just explain this route then. How does the Ice Silk Road work?
Well, yes, I mean, you have to qualify it slightly by saying we're not quite sure that it's going to work, but it's quite an interesting idea, which is why I decided to look at it in today's paper. Yeah, as you say, global warming is happening and happening twice as fast in the Arctic as the global average. As we've seen this more often in the pictures of this more often from the Antarctic, that the polar ice caps are more affected than elsewhere. So the summers are longer. That's the long and short of it. The Northeast Passage, which of course was fabled for adventurers for centuries, trying to find a passage across the north of Russia to Asia, came across the fact that it was icebound most or all of the year. Now it is navigable in the summer weeks, certainly with the help of icebreakers. And Russia particularly, and also China, see this as an alternative route. For Russia, it's one that has a particular use in that it is out of sight of American warships and out of sight, therefore, of people trying to monitor sanctions busting. And of course, the US now and Europe use sanctions as a major tool of foreign policy. So countries that are nervous of that, which include Russia, but also China, are looking for ways that, for example, Russian oil can be moved to China and other clients away from the gaze of American and other warships.
And so is it one, I mean, if it were to work, and we, project 10 years or whatever into the future, does that mean that existing routes would be used less?
Well, possibly, yes. So, I mean, let's give some figures. So, the first time a container vessel managed to get all the way from China to Europe via the North Sea Passage was only in 2013. It was very recently. But in the summer months, so with an icebreaker, you can now all those places that sound very remote, like Murmansk and Archangel and the Barents Sea, all those sort of Arctic locations. You can get now from east to west or west to east using that route. And last year, 80 ships used some or all of that route for trading purposes. And of course, Siberia is a market for Russia, and it's also a place where oil is found and natural gas. It's a useful route. But what happens if, for example, the Suez Canal becomes permanently blocked by war or by like that ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal the other year? Then theoretically this is another way to get from Shanghai to Rotterdam or to Felixstowe. The Russians have a target of set a sort of target of 120 million tons of shipping of cargo to use that route by 2035. Now at the moment it's about 35. Now that compares to the Suez Canal, which is 1.27 billion. So you're still talking only a fraction. But if that Russian plan comes off, not an insignificant fraction would be using that route.
And is what's to be gained here more economic or symbolic?
So certainly there is an economic effect. I mean, of course it's actually a much shorter route. So if the global warming continues, and there are various projections for how long that summer season might last, in the decades to come, depending on what degree of global warming you get, of course. But it knocks say again, to use Shanghai Rotterdam, it's 25% shorter than going through the Suez Canal. So that's quite a significant saving in terms of days at sea and therefore costs and fuel and so on. So there is a significant economic saving. But the symbolic thing for Russia and China, which is such a huge part of their policy at the moment, of saying, look, we don't need America. We are forging an alliance of nations that is outside the American geopolitical purview, so to speak, is also very important to them.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much for that. It's very interesting. It's Richard Spencer, who's the Times' China correspondent.